Hello and welcome to a Tuesday live right here on the early line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination and consume everything all across the grid. I am Ben Stevens, and filling in for Donnie Rightside on this Tuesday, Davis Maddock joins us on this Tuesday live right here all across the grid on the early line. Davis, there is history today on this edition of the early line because for the first time, there has been an edition of the early line on the SportsGrid network since May 1st, 2021. Donnie Rightside is not here. Like Cal Ripken Jr. playing 2,632 consecutive Major League Baseball games, DRS's Iron Horse streak comes to a close today. But very glad to have you here picking up where Donnie left off. Davis, we can make the joke about Donnie not being here because he's been working his tail off throughout football season, or just the simple joke that he's ducking all the criticism that would come his way after his Philadelphia Eagles collapsed last night in the NFL postseason.
You know, we could. We're going to be a little bit kinder than that. Honestly, I was on the Eagles last night. I really did not foresee a first-round playoff exit to Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, although obviously you see the Sooners helmet behind me picking between Jalen Hurts and Baker Mayfield. I mean, that is a bit of a Sophie's choice for someone like me. So not that I was too bummed out to see Baker win that game, but yeah, I mean, just truly the Cowboys losing a home playoff game, come on. No one has ever actually in human history been surprised by that. But the Eagles losing in the first round, in the wild card round, I mean, that is like a legitimate surprise, no matter how bad the vibes were heading into that game.
Let's bring in that SportsGrid Radio audience here to start off this opening hour of a Tuesday on the early line. Sirius XM, channel 159. All of our radio terrestrial affiliates now in the fold as well. He is Davis Maddock. I am Ben Stevens. So for a third consecutive day to start off the NFL postseason on Super Wildcard Weekend, a doubleheader of playoff action. Super Wildcard Weekend now in the books. The division around the final 8 in the National Football League is now set. And as Davis alluded to, and as we have said, the jokes will come from Donnie Rightside. Believe me, here on the early line, the Philadelphia Eagles, after a 10-1 start to the 2023 National Football League regular season, lost 5 of their final 6 games in the regular season and are bounced after only 1 game in the NFL playoffs. Booked as a road favorite last night in Tampa, the Buccaneers pull off a slight upset as the home underdog. 32-9, the final score. Baker Mayfield and Tampa Bay win outright as a 3-point home underdog. Again, Davis, as you alluded to, a stunner to end out Super Wildcard Weekend.
Just too many injuries at the wrong time, at the wrong positions, without enough of a game plan in between. You know, the Eagles had to play the Bills, the Cowboys twice, the Chiefs, the Dolphins, who we thought were good, the 49ers. I mean, they basically had to play every good team in the NFL other than the Baltimore Ravens. And in doing so, they lost like their entire defense. A.J. Brown did not play in that upset loss. Like, just, if you could measure vibes around an NFL team, I would say the vibes around the Philadelphia Eagles on January 15th had to have been at like an all-time low for a playoff team, truly.
Yeah, absolutely so. For the second time in the last 3 years, Jalen Hurts and the Birds go into Tampa and lose in the opening round of the NFL postseason. Philadelphia only won once since the end of November. We will look at the season that was in the disappointment for Philly up next. For the Buccaneers, they are on to divisional round weekend. They will head to Detroit on Sunday afternoon to take on the Lions. Detroit currently booked as a 6-point home favorite. The first game up that wasn't originally scheduled for Monday, but because of the wintry weather in Western New York over the weekend, postponed to Monday afternoon. It was the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers. A delay was no issue for Buffalo, winning by 2 touchdowns, firmly in control of the game against the Steelers yesterday. The Bills victorious 31-17. Davis covering as a 10-point home favorite.
Covering and, completely without a doubt. There was not 1 second during that game that any Bills fan thought they would lose. There was not 1 second in that game that any Steelers fan thought that they would win. Josh Allen scores the long rushing touchdown. That was pretty much That was pretty much it at that point. You let Josh Allen score a 50-yard rushing touchdown, and that's going to be all she wrote. Mike Tomlin storms off when asked about his future at the press conference. Obviously, Mike Tomlin is not the issue with the Steelers. The issue with the Steelers is they have not had a quarterback since Big Ben turned, 35 was the last good Big Ben season. So we're talking 6-7 years ago. Kenny Pickett, not that guy. Mason Rudolph, not that guy. Mitch Trubisky, not that guy. This will be the Steelers team until they change that.
More than 300 combined yards for Josh Allen yesterday. 4 total scores, 3 through the air, 1 on the ground. His 16th rushing touchdown of this season. So the offseason now for Pittsburgh, the offseason for many other teams around the National Football League, including both the Atlanta Falcons and the New England Patriots, after a 24-year run in New England that featured, of course, the come-from-behind surprise in the Super Bowl in 2018 against Atlanta. Bill Belichick interviewed with the Atlanta Falcons yesterday.
Should not be a very good hire for them. I don't really see. I guess if you think that you can hire Bill Belichick and also hire a very high level offensive coordinator and find a quarterback in one offseason, I don't really see how Bill Belichick plus Desmond Ridder is really any different than what we just saw happen when Bill Belichick coached the New England Patriots. I don't really see what result changes there. It just doesn't really work for me.
Yeah, an owner in the ATL, an Arthur Blank, that has the money and is fully in. We will see what happens with the Falcons head coaching vacancy. Officially, now, not surprisingly, but officially, Caleb Williams has entered the 2024 NFL Draft. The 2022 Heisman Trophy winning quarterback out of USC and a brief stop at Oklahoma as well has declared for the NFL Draft. Davis, he is a minus 1,000 favorite to be that first overall pick at the end of April.
Yeah, as he should be. I definitely am not one of these people that is going to you see this on social media and stuff, like the concern trolling about Caleb Williams. Not me. Caleb Williams came in at 18 at the University of Oklahoma, looked like the best quarterback in all of college football. He is going to be a phenomenal NFL quarterback.
I would agree with that assessment as well. Now some NBA news. Draymond Green returns last night for Golden State against a really banged-up Memphis Grizzlies team that is having a disastrous season, and yet the Dubs fall to 4 games below 500, losing outright in Memphis as a 7.5-point favorite, 116-107. Speaking of returns, Davis, Joel Embiid back yesterday for Philadelphia, a 41-point performance in his first game since January 5th.
Joel Embiid, he's the man. He's going to win. He's going to win MVP because every time he's available, he plays against the crappiest teams on the 76ers schedule.
Quickly here, UConn, by the way, back up to number 1 in the AP Top 25 for the first time since 2009. A recap of Super Wildcard Weekend next. Sat down with Nick Saban for a lengthy interview. You have spoken to Nick Saban multiple times throughout his career. How surprised were you?
I mean, he's not going anywhere, I don't believe. And at the end of the day, very surprised. Athletic department surprised. Talked to a few people, Alabama folks, late last night, early this morning. Very surprised. Didn't see it coming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted him out. They still wanted him gone.
Mike Shula,
Mike Shula was a disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those two plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars have, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression. It's not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Super Wild Card Weekend. Now in the books, the opening round of the NFL postseason has come to a close. Just 8 more teams left in the running for a Lombardi Trophy during the 2023 National Football League season after the end of Super Wild Card Weekend and a doubleheader to end things out on a Monday. The originally slated Monday Night Football finale was in Tampa between the Buccaneers and the Eagles. Philly, despite losing 5 of their final 6 games to end out the regular season, was booked as the road favorite in Tampa Bay. The Birds Davis laying 3 on the road against the Buccaneers. But Tampa, the best underdog team in the National Football League all regular season long, for any team booked as a dog multiple times this year, stands tall once again, winning outright as a 3-point home underdog and putting a whopping on the Birds 32-9. Philly bounced after just 1 game in the National Football League playoffs. The Bucs are on to the divisional round, and a road trip to the Motor City awaits next Sunday.
Yeah, which actually I think it might end up being a pretty good game between the Lions and the Buccaneers. You know, maybe I'm the last one left in the United States to not be sold on the Lions. I did pick the Rams in that game. I bet on them with the points. I actually did kind of expect the Rams to win that game, but the Buccaneers are sort of fascinating because they definitely have had some real highs, and Baker Mayfield was coming into that game injured, kind of in a similar way to the Philadelphia Eagles. I thought there was a chance that he just was not able to get through, but they had some real lows to their season for a team that is now in the divisional round. They lost to the Falcons. They lost to the Indianapolis Colts. They lost to the Saints. They lost actually all the way back in week 3, got just absolutely smoked by the Eagles. Yeah. I guess the big thing for them was, one, they actually did have a lot of success running the ball in the back half of the season when the Eagles stopped being able to run the ball entirely. And Mayfield really for the first time in his career, I guess 2020, he was quite good in 2020, but just really limited the turnovers. That had been Baker's problem in a lot of these big spots before, had been the interceptions. He gets through clean, obviously, against the Eagles, but only 10 interceptions for the entire season, and the second best year of his career in yards per attempt. Baker is obviously going to get the Geno Smith contract from the Buccaneers this offseason, but I think instead of 1 year, I think he's going to get, 5 years, 4 years maybe, but $32 million per. I mean, it's going to be I don't know how much they're going to love that contract, but he is definitely going to get it.
Yeah, it's really interesting to look at Tampa this year. Again, booked as an underdog more than one time in the NFL. The Buccaneers had the best cover percentage at the end of the regular season. 8-3 against the number. 5 of those 8 covers an outright victory. Now make it 9-3 ATS. 6 of those 9 covers an outright win, and even 500 records straight up, booked as an underdog this season. And you can see in Baker Mayfield's stat line yesterday against Philadelphia the glaring issues for this Eagles defense all year long that came to a head down a miserable stretch run. Philly allowed at least 20 points in its final 11 games this year and was the second worst passing defense in the NFL at the end of the regular season, allowing 253 yards per game. Baker Mayfield sailing over his passing yards prop last night against the Birds. It was 231.5. He had 100 more than that with 337 and 3 touchdowns. And Davis, Philly could not tackle the ball out in open space to any wide receivers like David Moore or Trey Palmer. Philly could not wrap up any of the Buccaneers wide receivers. Glaring issues for Philadelphia defensively. A wild year on that side of the football. Sean Desai started and is still technically the defensive coordinator for Philadelphia, but Matt Patricia was the guy calling plays. Either way, it did not work for Philadelphia in an epic collapse for a team that was alongside San Francisco, had the best start to this year, the last undefeated side in the NFL, a perfect 5-0. And Davis, a 10-1 start to this year for the Eagles, a team that was seen as a Super Bowl contender once again, who had a Super Bowl appearance just a season ago, now left with so many questions moving forward this offseason, even around their head coach, Nick Sirianni, if he will be the Eagles head coach moving into 2024.
Oh, I think he probably won't be, right? I mean, I think that you let the team get that far down and you're not able to stop the spiral, because you sort of feel like that's probably the primary job of a head coach, of these CEO style head coaches in the NFL. Like, you have all these coordinators who you don't call the plays on the offensive or the defensive side of the ball. You're not, positionally working with anyone. Mostly what you are doing is sort of just, mandating what is going on with the team. And it feels like he was like uniquely unable to stop the slide of what was going on with the team. How about this?
Yeah.
The Eagles, their success, I mean, I don't think you could point to one team in the NFL's success that is more tied to one play than the Philadelphia Eagles, with the tush push, the brotherly shove. Yeah. They are obviously the best team in the NFL. I am definitely not one of these people that thinks it should be outlawed, because you watch, we saw the Bills do it a couple times on Sunday, and it was successful, but it didn't look like when the Eagles do it. It looked like a mess. It looked like someone's going to get hurt doing this. Josh Allen is like perpendicular to the ground. He's parallel with the line of scrimmage. It's like, it's so messed up. Well, Jason Kelce is kind of the secret of how that works. He retired. He said, that's it. That's it for me. So you've got no center to run the play with. You've got a quarterback who keeps getting banged up. And obviously, like, every quarterback gets banged up. It's just kind of the name of the game. But they just, I don't know. They definitely cannot go into next season with this group of skill position players and play things the exact same way. There's going to have to be real schematic changes, I think, for them to expect success next year.
Jason Kelce, a first ballot Hall of Famer, 13 years with the Philadelphia Eagles, 6 of the last 7 in AP All-Pro first team selection at that center spot. Questions now for Philadelphia moving forward. Of course, last year reaching Super Bowl 57, Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon, the DC, both of those guys got head coaching positions. Both were honestly pretty good. The Arizona Cardinals, of course, did not have any playoff contention hopes like Indianapolis did under Shane Steichen, but Arizona booked as a dog in all 17 regular season games, 9-8 against the spread. Brian Johnson, the OC, there was a report that came out prior to the Monday Night Football finale for Philly last night in Tampa that Jalen Hurts was not happy with the direction offensively under Brian Johnson and was displeased with what Nick Sirianni was doing, or the lack thereof, to really change the course for this offense. Now, did throw for 250 yards, but only 5 rushing yards last night against this Buccaneers defense, and the tush-push was non-existent, not a rushing score for Jalen Hurts last night. So that's where things stand from Philadelphia. Questions to be answered this offseason. But again, we highlight the Buccaneers, an NFC South Divisional Championship, Davis, for a third straight season, a playoff victory last night, booked as a home underdog. Now they will go on the road Sunday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern time, the first game of the doubleheader on Sunday against the Detroit Lions. The Buccaneers right now booked as a 6-point road underdog.
They are, and I mean, I think I would probably right now, if I had to make a wager, I'd probably make it for the Buccaneers. I'd probably just say I don't think the Lions are good enough to be 6-point favorites over other playoff teams. You know, they have enough vulnerabilities, and they've shown those vulnerabilities. It's not as if the Lions are on this run where we haven't seen them, you know, make real mistakes, get blown out. They're too stubborn about using David Montgomery, obviously. Mm-hmm. Now, Goff against the Rams, could he have played any better? Could he himself? I don't really think he could have played any better. And they barely got out of there. They barely got out of there, mostly because Sean McVay is kind of an idiot and doesn't really manage the game the right way. But we got 3 more hours to break this one down.
That we certainly do. The first game of the doubleheader, a recap next. Sat down with Nick Saban for a lengthy interview. You have spoken to Nick Saban multiple times throughout his career. How surprised were you?
I mean, he's not going anywhere, I don't believe. And at the end of the day, very surprised. Athletic department surprised. Talked to a few people, Alabama folks, late last night, early this morning. Very surprised. Didn't see it coming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev. Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted him out. They still wanted him gone.
Mike Shula,
Mike Shula was a disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those 2 plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars have, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression. It's not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
A doubleheader of NFL playoff action to end out Super Wild Card Weekend on a Monday. This a Tuesday. Live right here to recap it all and set the stage for the divisional round here on the early line. He is Davis Maddock. I am Ben Stevens. So, Davis, yesterday the first game up was originally scheduled for Sunday, but because of the winter weather in Western New York, postponed by a day to Monday afternoon. No issue for the Buffalo Bills. It was the Bills hosting the Steelers. Buffalo took an early 21-zip lead about midway through the second quarter and was in clear domination of this football game pretty much from the jump. Now, Pittsburgh did make it interesting midway through the second half, but really never in danger. The Bills win 31-17, over a total of 38.5, and even laying double digits in an NFL playoff game, Buffalo easily covers as a 10-point home favorite in Orchard Park. The Bills will host the Chiefs in the divisional round. The Steelers season comes to a close, and don't ask Mike Tomlin about his future in the Steel City.
Yeah, do not ask Mike Tomlin about what's going on there. That was a little bit brutal. I mean, you really, I guess as a reporter, you got to ask. I mean, we can't be too upset about it. But I mean, it's Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin is sort of, he's just going to be there as long as he keeps this insane streak of not having a losing season going. I mean, it's sort of absurd. I guess it is sort of. You could see it being one of these things where is being 9-7 every year really what you want? I mean, I don't know. But the Steelers definitely would be an attractive place for if the quarterback carousel goes insane this offseason, which I think it could because of the quarterbacks that we have in the draft. And we have guys like Kirk Cousins who might be nearing the end of his time in Minnesota. Maybe the Dolphins decide they don't want to pay Tua. Like there are scenarios you could see where things really get shaken up at quarterback. I mean, if I was a really good quarterback, I maybe I wouldn't want to play for the Steelers if I was 28. But if I was 34 and I still hadn't, played in a conference championship game, maybe I would think about going in that direction. But it's just sort of one of those games. Like, to me, I thought it was totally possible that the Packers could just play better than the Cowboys. It wouldn't have to be a variance thing. It would just be Jordan Love would play really well. Like, an upset is totally possible. But the Steelers, I mean, they could have played this game 1,000 times, and the Steelers never would have played better than the Bills. They could have won via, just some classic Steelers grit and grind and luck and things like that. But they were never going to play better than the Bills. And that just doesn't, that's just not that entertaining of a football game where the skill levels are just not equal.
Yeah, the Pittsburgh Steelers probably would have benefited from playing the game when it was originally scheduled in a blizzard on Sunday afternoon when the total was 33.5 to keep the scoring to a minimum. There will be questions for Pittsburgh to answer, but on the other side, a Buffalo team that was just 2-6 against the spread, booked as a touchdown favorite or greater throughout the regular season. Yesterday was that dominant side, Davis, we really expected the Bills to be all season long in 2023. All spearheaded, of course, by their freight train who runs like a Mack truck of a quarterback in Josh Allen. More than 300 combined yards yesterday, 203 through the air and 74 on the ground, including a 52-yard touchdown scamper in that game as well. His 16th rushing touchdown of the year, the 9th rushing score for Josh Allen in Buffalo's last 7 games. And if there is any detracting from what Josh Allen can do at the quarterback spot, it's his turnover-worthy plays. Yesterday, not many, and 0 turnovers. 3 touchdowns to 0 INTs, no fumbles either for the Buffalo Bills. A clean game for Buffalo, keeping it out of the hands of Pittsburgh, led by Josh Allen. And because of it, the Bills are on to the divisional round once again.
They are, and obviously deserving, obviously a spot, I mean, look, let's be real about it, a spot the Buffalo Bills have been in plenty of times in the Josh Allen, Sean McDermott reign. They've actually been in this exact spot before, a divisional round game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the last time that these two teams met in the playoffs, it was in Kansas City. It was really probably one of the best modern NFL games, right? I mean, if we're just thinking about modern classics. I think the when it's grim, be the Grim Reaper game for the Kansas City Chiefs. Probably actually, honestly, the first Super Bowl is my favorite game in the Chiefs era, the win against the 49ers. But the 13-second game against the Bills is probably number 2. The Bills, I think it's sort of this very interesting matchup between the Bills and the Chiefs, where both fan bases are just incredibly nervous and really did not want this to be the matchup. I'm speaking as a Chiefs fan. I honestly would rather play the Ravens, really, because the Ravens, I at least know, I'm going to know like 15 minutes into the Ravens game if the Chiefs are going to win or not. The Bills game it's going to be 3 hours of just like, it's just going to be miserable. It's just really not going to be a fun watch. And I honestly, I'm not looking forward to it, Ben. I'm really not.
A 2.5-point spread at this moment for the fourth and final game of the divisional round weekend, Sunday afternoon in Western New York, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. Again, the Bills booked as a 2.5-point favorite, the over-under 46.5. The big difference from the time these two teams met 2 postseasons ago, of course, that game was in Arrowhead. This will be the first true road game for Patrick Mahomes in his NFL playoff career. 15 games, either all in Arrowhead or in a neutral site. That was a Super Bowl appearance. We will see what Mahomes and KC can do on the road against Josh Allen. As we look back at yesterday, Davis, we expected, given the conditions, it wasn't 55 degrees and balmy just because they delayed the game by over 24 hours. We expected Buffalo to rely more on that ground game. Not only 74 yards, Davis, from Josh Allen, but James Cook, a big day on the ground as well. 18 attempts, 79 yards over his rushing yards prop that was booked pregame at 62.5. How do you see this Buffalo offense evolving under Joe Brady and now into the postseason?
I mean, I think the number one thing that Joe Brady did was he just brought everything closer to the line of scrimmage. That is the number one shift I see once he took over. There's a clear delineation. Like, if I were to ask you the last time Stephon Diggs had a 100-yard game, you'd be like, oh, he's been all right. He's probably had one. Stephon Diggs has not had 100 receiving yards in a game since October 15th against the New York Giants. That's the last time he had a 100-yard game. Stephon Diggs has not had a multi-touchdown game since the week before that in the route of the Miami Dolphins. I mean, I think that we are just so accustomed to Diggs and Allen. That is the engine that works for the Buffalo Bills. That has just not been the case this year. The team throws to the running backs more than they ever have. James Cook is 4th on the team in targets. Latavius Murray has more targets than their 4th wide receiver, Trent Sherfield. Ty Johnson getting involved in the passing game. Ty Johnson has a receiving touchdown, 17 receptions for Latavius Murray, not how they would have drawn things up. Dalton Kincaid, 2nd on the team in receiving. Gabriel Davis did miss this game. I thought Khalil Shakir played pretty well in his absence. I do think they'll need Gabe Davis back. I don't know if you want to be playing a lot of 2 tight end stuff against Kansas City. They're just going to be so good at keeping everything in front of Kansas City's defense, as we saw in the Dolphins game. Like, that is not going to work. When they kept everything in front, the Chiefs closed all those gaps too quickly. The one great play they made, they challenged him down the field. Jalen Watson committed defensive pass interference, and it didn't matter. Tyreek still secured the ball and scored. Like, you're gonna need that down the field skill set against the Chiefs, I think.
Yeah, absolutely so. Kansas City's defense better now probably than it was 2 years ago as well. Steve Spagnuolo's crew always rounds into form by the time you get deeper into January and into the playoffs. But the Chiefs this year, 2nd best scoring defense, 2nd best total defense throughout the regular season in the National Football League, 4th best passing defense as well. Some issues defending the run at times, but certainly a top 5 unit across the board. For the Pittsburgh Steelers yesterday against the Buffalo Bills, Najee Harris, Davis, on the 3-game win streak Pittsburgh had to end out the regular season to earn this playoff berth, $122 and 2 touchdowns week 17 against Seattle, 112 rushing yards in the regular season finale against Baltimore, at least 78 in the 3-game win streak to end out the year for the Steelers. 12 carries, 37 yards. Jalen Warren, in fact, was the leading rusher for the Steelers, 8 carries, 38 yards. Again, we are going to preview divisional weekend in just a little bit, but we saw Mike Tomlin walk off the podium when asked about his future in Pittsburgh. What do you think is next for this Steelers franchise?
I mean, honestly, I think they just roll it back the exact same next year. I think it's Jalen Warren, Najee Harris. I think they go back to Pickett as the starting quarterback, in week 1. I don't think they roll with Mason Rudolph. I think one change they could make is they could try and get in the free agent market for wide receiver, because I believe Deontay Johnson's contract is up after this season. I'd have to go double check that, but you just maybe get someone like a little bit more dynamic than Deontay Johnson. But it feels like they just run back literally the same recipe and say Mike Tomlin's going to make it work.
Listen, similar colors, similar consistency at the head coaching position to the Iowa Hawkeyes. The jokes are there, but it will be year number 18 for Mike Tomlin if he returns at the helm of the Steelers next year. Never a losing season, never less than 8 wins in the 17 years in Pittsburgh. Around the association, we go next. Sat down with Nick Saban for a lengthy interview. You have spoken to Nick Saban multiple times throughout his career. How surprised were you?
I mean, he's not going anywhere, I don't believe. And at the end of the day, very surprised. Athletic department surprised. Talked to a few people, Alabama folks, late last night, early this morning. Very surprised. Didn't see it coming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev. Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted him out. They still wanted him gone.
Mike Shula, you replacing
was
him?
a disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those 2 plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars had, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression. It's not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Around the association we go. And you might be paying more attention to the NBA as football season comes to a close. Listen, still 3 more rounds of the NFL playoffs. Divisional weekend, one of the best in all of the sport. Next weekend, conference championship weekend. Following, of course, Super Bowl weekend 2 weeks after that. 7 NFL games, though, only left for the remainder of the 2023 campaign. So, Davis, a lot of people might be turning their eyeballs a little bit more to what we are seeing in the NBA. But just because you are starting to pay attention to basketball doesn't mean the NBA season just got underway. Davis, for most teams around the association, we're almost at the midway point of 2023-24.
We are almost at the midway point, and it's been, to be honest, one of the more fascinating regular seasons that the NBA's had in a long time. You know, we've got one dominant team, the Denver Nuggets, and I think there are a lot of people who, you know, I don't know, you rightfully or wrongfully are not that impressed with the Denver Nuggets' effort this regular season. I mean, they've been banged up. They are also totally in sort of like wake me up when it is, wake me up when it is the playoffs type mode. We've got the Boston Celtics, who are clearly the best team in the Eastern Conference, but the Boston Celtics have been the best team in the Eastern Conference for 5 years, 6 years, and it's translated into a lot of turnovers and missed jump shots in the NBA playoffs. So I think people are rightfully saying, all right, well, maybe we can just disregard regular season performance from the Boston Celtics until we see Kristaps Porzingis make 3-point shots in the NBA playoffs. And how about this? We finally have a changing of the guard in the Western Conference. We have 2 young teams, the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Minnesota Timberwolves, completely just gate crashing the top of the standings in the Western Conference. Like, this is an awesome regular season, I think.
Davis, that will be one of the main storylines that I am most interested by here down the second half of the NBA regular season. How are those young teams like Minnesota, who has the best record in the Western Conference, or OKC, who has that second best winning percentage out west? How are they evaluated by the time we get closer to the postseason in April and in May? Because as of this moment, big picture view, there are 3 teams around the NBA, the Celtics, the Nuggets, and the Bucks, that have a 3-digit price to win the NBA championship this year. All 3 teams under $5 before we drop off to the Clippers at 11-1 and the 76ers at 12-1 as well. Let's look back on a Monday night around the NBA. Another storyline, Davis, the struggles of the Golden State Warriors and maybe the end of an era up in the Bay Area. The Golden State Warriors now 4 games below 500 after a loss last night on the road in the Grind City to Memphis. 18-22, the record overall for the Dubs. But what stands out about this Memphis matchup, Davis, is the fact that Golden State had Draymond Green return, his first game since December 12th, and the Warriors were booked as a 7.5-point road favorite against a Memphis team without Ja Morant for the rest of this year, and without both Marcus Smart and Desmond Bane for the foreseeable future, and the Grizzlies still win outright as a 7.5-point home underdog.
They do. Yeah, I mean, look, this is it's completely over for the Golden State Warriors. And well, I'm not going to say that. It is not completely over for Steph Curry. You could tell me that the Golden State Warriors, they load up all the picks, all the salaries they have, they do all the permutations. I actually think probably you want to keep Draymond so that you can continue to do the super small lineup things and start him at center in the playoffs. But you got to get Chris Paul's salary off the books. You have got to get Klay Thompson's salary off the books. You probably have to use Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody to do that. And what happens is the Golden State Warriors becomes like what the Lakers are, where it's you've got one guy that you orbit around and you just try and find the right mix of role players. And in 2020, with a 37-year-old LeBron James, 36-year-old LeBron James, they found the right mix. They got Anthony Davis in. They decided to start Dwight Howard at center. I think people kind of forget that. Last year, they did make the conference finals, basically trading for Jared Vanderbilt, D'Angelo Russell, and Malik Beasley, and they turned that into, and Rui Hachimura, and they turned that into a playoff quality rotation. It's not going to happen for the Warriors this year because they're too far behind. But if they started planning now, if that front office starts planning now, starts reaching out now, starts shedding salary now, and I think you could get Curry on board with that. I mean, obviously that's the hard thing, is sitting down with your franchise superstar and saying, we are not going for it this year. We are not going to be winning a championship this season. We've got to delay it. And I'm sure Curry, who's 35 years old, is sitting there going, come on, man, my knees hurt, my ankles hurt. This is how you want me to go out. This is how you want people to remember me, losing at home to G.G. Jackson. It's not going to be what he wants. I guarantee that.
Yeah, Steph's still the game's leading scorer, 26 points, 8 dimes, only 3 of 9 from deep. Draymond Green did make his return, again, first game after serving his indefinite suspension since December 12th. 24 minutes off the bench for Draymond, 7 points, 4 assists, 7 boards. He's not going to fill it up statistically at this stage of his career. Is there anything, Davis, that Draymond can do now back in the fold that can right the ship for the Dubs? Or is this season just going to look like what we have seen through the first 40 games, a Golden State team that's 4 games below 500?
I mean, I think that if the standings were not so absolutely jam-packed ahead of them, the issue is there are only 3 bad teams in the entire conference, the Memphis Grizzlies, the Portland Trail Blazers, and the San Antonio Spurs. Everyone else is good and is trying to win, all the way down from Houston at 19 and 20, all the way up to the Kings at 23 and 16. All those teams are good, and all those teams want to win. Can I say with any confidence the Golden State Warriors, even with one trade that they win by 200%, would be better than the Pelicans? Absolutely not. Actually, probably no chance. The Pelicans are just way better. And that's the 7th seed. If the 7th seed in your conference, 1 through 15, is just way better than you, I think, because obviously what happened with the Warriors was they tried to do the 2 timelines, right? That was the quote. So we've got Wiseman, we've got Kuminga, we've got Moody, we've got all these picks, and we're going to have 2 timelines. We're going to have all of our vets, and they tried to have their cake, and they tried to eat the cake as well. And I mean, maybe you could say they're vindicated because they did literally just win an NBA championship 18 months ago. So maybe that does work out for them a little bit, but they waited too long to trade Wiseman. They obviously could have traded Wiseman earlier. They probably ultimately should have just traded the Wiseman pick for Bradley Beal. That was kind of the reported transaction that was available. I think obviously if they could go back and do that again, they probably would. The other thing, no one really talks about this either. Obviously the owners of the Golden State Warriors are rich beyond anything that you and I could possibly imagine. But this Warriors team right now that is 18 and 22 and that just lost to the 9th string Memphis Grizzlies is the most expensive team in NBA history. It is costing the ownership group of the Golden State Warriors $3 extra for every $1 that they are over the salary cap, and they are quite far over the salary cap. I think it's like over $500 million that they are paying just in salary, not in operating costs, not in the arena, not in paying the coach. It's just in salary cap. So all of that is that is fairly interesting. It's just a mess, honestly.
Listen, I'm not the biggest financial whiz out there, but I can even say that's not great return on the investment from the Golden State ownership group. Also a return yesterday in NBA action for Joel Embiid. Now, it was his first game since January 5th after missing 3 games, but JoJo has already missed double-digit games this year for Philadelphia, but when he has been on the floor, not many better than Joel Embiid at this stage of the NBA season. 41 points, 10 boards, Davis, in his return last night for Philly. Last night, the game actually tipped at 1 p.m. Eastern time yesterday on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And Philadelphia gets a victory, 124-115, just barely covering, winning by 9 as an 8.5-point home favorite. But Joel Embiid, Davis, has scored at least 30 points in 17 consecutive games for Philadelphia. That's a span dating back to November 15th, his first game back after missing 3, and Embiid goes off for 41 and 10.
Does go off for 41 and 10. I mean, I was kind of making fun of Joel Embiid earlier because he's missing a lot of the games he's missing are like tough road games, you know, like, oh, we got a road game against the Nuggets. We got a road game against the Celtics. I'm probably going to sit that one out. Home game to the Rockets. Sure. Yeah. Why not? I am available for that one. Obviously, it's a bit tongue in cheek. Now, what's interesting is that now they have clearly fallen behind the Milwaukee Bucks in the playoff hierarchy, because for a while they were pretty far above them and it was looking like they would get the 2 seed. And the playoff matchups that are available to them at this stage, if they're going to be the 3 or the 4 seed, it's not anyone they want to play. The Knicks, the Pacers, the Magic, like none of those are particularly good. None of those are particularly good matchups for them. You know, I think they really would like to be the 2 seed because they're not going to want to. It's so funny. The last time I hosted the early line, I was on with Coach Young and I was like, dude, the Knicks, they stink. What are they doing? Like, no one is. This is such a good trade for them. It's like getting Anunoby in there and then quickly, who obviously would have been a great player for any team, but Tom Thibodeau just didn't want to play him that much, just did not want to do Quickly and Brunson together. It's just like now they're bigger, they're tougher, no one can score on them. It's like exactly what Tom Thibodeau wants to do. Like, I guarantee you that Embiid does not want to play 7 games against Mitchell Robinson, Hartenstein, and Julius Randle and just get beat up. Like, no one wants that.
The Sixers now 21-8 against the spread when booked as the favored side. Oklahoma City actually closed as the slight 1.5-point road favorite last night in LA against the fully healthy Lakers side with both Anthony Davis and LeBron James in the fold. And it was the Lakers winning outright as a short home underdog, 112-105 over OKC, a team that entered 17-7 against the spread. The Lakers winning outright for just the 5th time this year, Davis, booked as the underdog.
Yeah, I mean, look, you got to count me as surprised on that one. Those are the sort of games that Oklahoma City has relatively handled. I guess Shea did come into the game. He was legitimately questionable with a knee injury. So, yeah, and you kind of saw it in his effectiveness. I mean, he was a little bit worse, although they did get a very good game from Jalen Williams, not a particularly good game from Giddey. Obviously, the big difference in that one was LeBron was absolutely on one, you know, just like a real vintage. Just like when I think of LeBron, I think of 25, 8, and 8. You know, that is the LeBron game, and they absolutely got one there.
25, 7, and 6 for LeBron James yesterday. Anthony Davis, 27 and 15. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, second best price to win the NBA MVP award. Just his 3rd game in the last 15 for the Thunder, where he has scored less than 30 points. He had 24 yesterday in LA. OKC remains in Los Angeles tonight for the second leg of a back-to-back to take on the Clippers. Some college hoops action coming your way up next, live right here on the Early Line. Sat down with Nick Saban for a lengthy interview. You have spoken to Nick Saban multiple times throughout his career. How surprised were you?
I mean, he's not going anywhere, I don't believe. And at the end of the day, very surprised. Athletic department surprised. Talked to a few people, Alabama folks, late last night, early this morning. Very surprised. Didn't see it coming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev. Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby. The money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted them out. They still wanted them gone.
Mike Shula, you're
Mike Shula
replacing
was
him?
a disaster. Dubas was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those two plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars have, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression. Not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
We round out hour number 1 of 3 live right here on the early line on this Tuesday on SportsGrid. What a chaotic week it was last week in men's college basketball. 15 of the AP top 25 Davis suffered at least one loss last week. 8 of the AP top 10 also suffering at least one defeat. Marquette was one of those 15 teams ranked inside the AP poll that had at least a loss a week ago. Marquette, because of it, drops all the way to number 17 in the country. And in a Big East showdown yesterday at home in Milwaukee, the Golden Eagles respond, winning by 13, 87-74, covering as a 6.5-point favorite against Villanova. Marquette now 3-3 in conference action, booked as a favorite in all 6 Big East games. They have covered in all 3 of their victories.
They have, they got 3 guys who were scoring in the double digits. They actually shoot a ton of 3-pointers. I do love this when you get someone like Shaka Smart coaching one of these random Big East schools, like where, in my mind, when I think of Big East basketball, I will think of every team has got to have one guard that is like unbelievably amazing when it comes tournament time. It's like, we're going to learn, Carson Edwards, right? I'm going to learn, he was not a Big East guy, but that's just kind of the archetype in my mind. And I love these Big East teams that just absolutely bomb the 3-pointers. That is what's going to get me to turn on a college basketball game in the cold winter months.
Tyler Kolek is certainly that Big East guard for Shaka Smart's side. The reigning Big East Player of the Year, 21 points, 11 assists, a double-double to pace Marquette yesterday. Cam Jones, his backcourt mate, a team high, 22 points for Marquette. The reigning Big East champions in both the regular season and in the Big East tourney inside Madison Square Garden. Now a 3-3 start to conference play. Villanova had won both of their games booked as an underdog prior to yesterday. Their first time not winning nor covering on the road in Milwaukee. NFL news and notes from around the league as hour number 2 starts in less than a minute.